Hey everybody, welcome. I can't believe we're on episode 18 already. Can you believe it? In 1 month and a half, I've recorded 18 episodes. And I just am on fire because the people that I'm meeting and the places that we're going are just so magnificent. The Mosaic is really connecting me to the right people, to the right things, to the right venues to see how we see the world differently. Today, I am extremely excited, because one of the things that the Mosaic talks about more than anything else is if you could see your world differently, what would you see? And my honored guest today is Siddiqi Ray. And Siddiqi has the incredible ability to take a soul portrait. And you'll know more, we'll talk more about what that is. But when she takes your photo, she not only takes a headshot, and you can see the difference in her before and afters with people that have done it before. She not only sees your outer characteristics, but she sees something about you inside that really brings out your authentic self. So Siddiqi, welcome to the Mosaic podcast. We are so honored to have you as our guest. Welcome.
Thank you, Danny. And really the honor is all mine. If I look at the lineup of those interviews that you've done, I'm like, whoa, this guy is like super connected to some just amazing, amazing beings, honestly.
Thank you so much. Let me give people a little bit of a background about you and then we'll jump in. Is that okay?
Sure, of course.
And I'm not a big background person, but I think it just sets the stage for people who, if they don't know you, will get a sense of who you've been. But my main focus is who you are right now. And I think they'll feel that through our interaction. But
yeah.
All that being said, Siddiqi is an internationally acclaimed photographer, inspirational speaker, and coach whose work merges intuition, creative vision, and pragmatic analysis. I want to know what that is. To help people come into their own power, connect authentically, and build trust through visibility. Siddiqi has worked for over 30 years. You wouldn't know it. You'd think she's like 15 years old already, right? She looks so. Has worked over 30 years with entrepreneurs, Forbes 100 listed corporations and billionaires, world business and spiritual leaders, including some notable names. Like, have you ever heard of the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, and several members of the Kennedy family? And she's also did an underwater series with the Navy SEALs. How fascinating that work is. We're so honored. Again, welcome to the Mosaic podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I wanted to be an actress.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about being an actress inspired you?
I love to play different characters and take on different personas. And I was really craving attention. And I thought it was just so creative and fun to explore these different ways of being and to really have all eyes on me. From a really early age, I just craved that, which is, interesting.
So it's so interesting that you would say that, because in the work you do now, you are the eyes that focus on somebody else.
I know.
So how is that desire to be seen infiltrated into the work that you do, which is seeing other people?
Yeah, I think that we all have a desire to be seen, and we go on this lifelong journey to play that out in various ways. And my history was I had this desire, this craving for people to pay attention to me and to see me. And my parents were both in the medical profession, so they were incredibly busy, always tired, very distracted. And my childhood way of going about being seen was a little disruptive. And so my nickname was Monster Baby, and I think what happens is that we are on this lifelong journey to really know who we truly are. And sometimes we have to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum because of the wounds that we have around wanting what we want and not getting it. So we develop, and this is what I see as a visibility expert and a coach, is I see a lot of really sophisticated mechanisms that we have played out in our lives to either not want what we want or try to get it in a really backwards way. And there's a whole story behind how I became a photographer, but that's where I originally started. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted attention. I wanted to be center stage. And then I went on this journey that was the exact opposite.
Wow. So when you were growing up, what did you hope would never change?
Great question. What I hoped would never change was my ability to have this very, very rich inner life where I saw all sorts of fairies and magical beings, and I could see in other people's heads, and I could experience this whole other realm that nobody else was relating to. And that was my lifeblood, was having those visions, having that constant experience of not just having to relate to the mundane, but having this whole magical existence. And I never wanted that to change.
And how did the world, like when I was a kid, I remember introducing my mom to my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with this person all the time. I mean, day and night, they were with me and I played all the time. And I said, Mom, I really want to introduce you to my best friend. And she looked and she said, Danny, there's nobody else in the room. I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? You can't see him? And she said, Danny, don't tell this to anybody else, because like I was 6 years old and my best friend was an imaginary being that I saw, but it wasn't imaginary to me. So I didn't get a lot of support for that imaginary friend. In fact, she told me people are going to think you're crazy. How did your outer world relate to this inner world that you were seeing, or did you share it with them at all?
Such a great question. So I love that moment that you had of not being able to discern what you were experiencing as real from, and assuming that everybody else was experiencing the same thing, right? Yeah. Until your mom shut down or criticized or told you it was wrong or bad or it wasn't right. And that is an experience of a lot of people. Mine was a little more profound than that, a little more traumatizing. So what would happen is I could literally hear my parents' thoughts and I would respond to their thoughts rather than what they were actually saying or doing. So one instance was we were in the car. It was a little Volkswagen Beetle. It was like that Dimetap blue color. And I could hear my dad's dialogue. I could hear my mom's, but I couldn't discern what reality was. And I said to my dad something like, Daddy, why are you always talking to that woman on the phone? Like, who is she? And my mom was like, what are you talking about? And my dad immediately was like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And that was just like one of hundreds of things that finally my parents sent me to childhood psychiatrists. And they did this whole battery of tests on like my intelligence, my IQ, all this stuff, observing me for like weeks on end. And finally, what I now know happened was my parents were like, okay, the doctor said that she believes her reality. But the problem was, the double bind was, I believe it, but it makes me so different in the world that I'm not going to survive because I'm not normal. Wow. So the psychiatrist, the best thinking at the time was to tell me that I was lying whenever I said it, and to systematically deny my reality and to punish me when I would bring up these things. And I didn't know this until like way later in my life, into my 30s. But this is what my parents believed was the best course of action, to systematically deny my reality. And then whenever I brought up this magical fantasy world, was to shut it down and punish me.
Wow. So I want to invite our listeners to actually take this mantle that Siddiqi has given of her story of her life and see how much relevance do they have in this? How many times have you seen things that people have said are not real? And do you have the courage in your own being to accept what you see, or does the weight of the world view make you stop believing that what you see is real? So that's really my question. Did the weight of the world's view of everybody telling you this cannot be true, you'll never succeed, you won't make it, you can't be seeing what you're seeing, did that, because you said up until the time you were 30, and I'm assuming it started when you were a child. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of years of being told that what you see isn't real. What effect did that have on you?
Well, the effect of being told that what I saw wasn't real, and also being told that I was crazy and I was wrong and it was bad, was interesting, because I also have to intersperse something in here that I think is really unique and interesting, which was my parents they were hippies, and they were studying meditation, and they were chanting, and every Sunday night they had gurus over and this group of hippies, and then on our family vacation, we would go to Virginia Beach to the Association of Realization and Enlightenment, which is Edgar Cayce, the most famous psychic in Western time, over 79,000 readings. So it was weird, because on one hand, I'm being introduced and taught all of these ways of like really getting in touch and really getting in tune and kind of transcending the physical realm. And yet at the same time, I'm being punished and questioned and shut down for the reality that I'm experiencing. So it was very, very confusing. It would have been different if I was brought up in a really religious family that was like, that's evil, that's wrong. But it wasn't the case. It was like, here I'm having all these experiences of cultivating this, but I'm not allowed to share it with the world. So what eventually happened was, and none of this was conscious at the time, hindsight's always 20/20, was I began to have a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of questioning of myself, and a lot of internalized anger and frustration, lots of frustration, which eventually turned into the need to medicate, the need to actually try myself to shut down the voices, because it's really crazy making when you're experiencing this alternate reality and nobody else relates to it. And it's very, very lonely. And it caused me to question myself. So I went on this journey of, becoming an anorexic, becoming a bulimic, trying to literally starve the voices out. And then when that wasn't enough, I tried to drink them away. I never was the alcoholic that was like out partying or anything. It was like I was alone in my room in high school trying to shut it up through like vodka and drinking myself into oblivion. And that then eventually turned to drugs. Like if I can just get enough drugs in my system, it shuts everything down for a little bit of time. And it was like, oh, finally peace and quiet. And then as soon as the drugs would wear off, it was like, the voices were there. So it literally felt like I was going crazy, and it was very, very depressing and produced a lot of anxiety.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the key components of my book, The Mosaic, is the fact that if we would just listen to people and let people tell us what they see without judging it or being angry or labeling it, what that would do for the world around us. And it seems like you were simply trying to communicate something that you had been taught to do, but when you actually did it, you were punished for it and sort of excommunicated or abandoned for it, right?
Banished, yeah.
Banished. And so much so that you wanted to kill everything that you had been taught to do, because somehow that wasn't right coming from you being able to do it. So was there a point in your time, was there a connection that happened in your life where somebody finally heard what you were trying to say, where someone finally felt okay, where someone allowed you to speak your truth? And do you remember what that was? And what
I do. And it makes me really sad. It was in my 30s that I was already in recovery for drugs and alcohol. And I was on this path of being a photographer, because of course there's no way I'm going to be an actress, because the fuel for being an actress was these voices. And now I can't connect with that. So now I'm not going to connect with, I'm not going to put myself out there, because that's off limits. So I'm in my 30s, and my mom calls me out of the blue one day and says, I just had this reading with this really famous psychic, and all she could talk about was you. And my mom starts crying, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? And she said that this psychic told her that she didn't say it's your fault, but she said, your daughter is incredibly gifted as a psychic and an intuitive, and you shut her down, and you made her shut that part of herself off, or try to kill it off. And that's why I tried to commit suicide several times. I was actually on a locked psychiatric ward for 2 years of my life. So this was like real. And my mom came to me and she apologized and she said, this is what happened. This was like, we were doing our best to try to get you to be normal and fit in because we knew you had these gifts, but we knew that you would never fit in society. And so this was our best attempt to help you integrate into the real world and like live a normal life. And she said, it wasn't until this psychic told me like who you really are and the effects of our best attempts to help you were actually the most damaging thing that we could do, because she's like, I realized that we left you alone with that whole thing and how scary that must have been. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And honestly, Danny, it wasn't, I had so repressed it. I didn't put any of it together until my mom's like, this psychic said, this is why you're a drug addict. This is why you're an alcoholic, because you were trying to drown out this voice. And I didn't know that. I did not know that until that moment. And all of a sudden it was like, I felt like my feet were tied up like a Japanese woman, and my whole being was tied up. And all of a sudden it felt like I was unraveled, but of course the effects of having your feet bound for your whole life are that your feet are deformed. And I felt like I had this deformed relationship with this other world. And I had permission, I had recognition on one hand, but on the other hand, it was like, it almost felt like it was too late.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, we had a conversation prior to this. None of this came out. And so
but you said you wanted the real story, the real meaning.
A billion percent. And I'm thrilled that this is coming out, because I just want people to sit and listen to the power that happens when we deny another person's reality. And the power that then happens when somebody unlocks the key within us to say, I will allow your reality to be. To me, most of the problems that exist in the world today are because we deny people's realities. And most of the solutions that come is when we unlock it and say, no, you have your reality, you're entitled to your reality. How do we coexist in that reality? So have you been able to unlearn what you were taught so that you could then now do what you came here to do? Or are you still in that process?
Well, I think I'll always be in that process until I can totally turn it around and come to the place where I'm actually inviting other people into this and willingly and freely leading with the conversation, instead of leading with, I'm this, iconic photographer, leading with, but the real gift I have is this insight that can really help you change your relationship with yourself. Because ultimately what my mom did in that moment was she helped me unlock and unravel all of these misperceptions I had about myself that were based in people pleasing, in trying to show up and be something that I wasn't, so that I could fit that mold of like fitting in and being comfortable, which never works, by the way. It never works. So it is a lifelong journey of feeling safe and feeling true to myself, offering this to the world without being woo, because to me, it's very practical. Like the information I have is incredibly practical, and it almost doesn't matter how I get it.
When you say the information you have, are you talking about your empathic, psychic ability?
Yeah, I'm talking about all the whole reality that I tap into on a regular basis is very powerful, because it really helps people to access the truth of who they are. And, and it's actually a transmission. It's not just information, it's a transmission of energy. And that energy helps people unravel, their DNA and activate it so that they can become more of who they are. So, I had to go on that lifelong journey to get to the place where I accepted that gift.
So, and this isn't a coaching and this isn't anything, it's simply a question. And please feel free not to answer it, okay? Just like you have the ability to see things that other people don't see and hear things that other people don't hear, part of the beauty of the mosaic is asking us individually, what if what we believe isn't true? What if that journey does not have to take a lifelong journey? What if right this moment, in this podcast right now, where you are so vulnerable and so honest and maybe presenting yourself, I've listened to some of the things you've done, but I haven't heard you speak like this. Mm-hmm. What if this moment was that transformation moment where you no longer had to have a lifelong journey? Mm. What would that free you up to do right now?
That's a great question. So if I didn't believe that it was a lifelong journey to reveal ourselves, what would that give me access to right now instantaneously?
That you would just had it right this minute.
Yeah. I would step onto stages and I would just channel. I wouldn't need to lead with I'm a photographer. I would just be like, this is what I see. And I would, invite people on the stage and I'd be like, where are you blocked? And what part of you are you not revealing? And I would help them to do that. And I would willingly share the whole, tapestry of what I am, the mosaic, right? The mosaic, all these different pieces of information, and help people put the mosaic together for themselves, you know? And it's interesting because scientifically we know, and I'm forgetting the research study that this comes from, but we know that pain and these wounding experiences happen in a split second, and then we feel the reverberating effects for a lifetime. Yeah. So, and we also know that pain is 4 times the motivator that pleasure is. So if I were to reverse engineer all that pain, I would say to you, I've had enough of the pain. I've felt the effects of it. And so why can't, in an instant of a second, like you say, why can't we immediately come to the place of peace, of freedom, of pleasure, of full self-expression? And I believe that we can, which is why I'm here having this conversation with you today.
Love it. Love it. And so it makes, like, one of the reasons why I like to go and delve into the sort of the background of a person in these podcasts is because when you start to hear the story, here's someone who wanted to be an actress, who wanted to be seen by everybody, who was then told that what you are isn't good enough and you can't be seen and you're never going to amount to anything. So how beautiful that you would then go behind the scenes, behind a camera, and try and bring out in other people what you wanted to have brought out. This is all my story. I'm just wanting to see if it makes sense. But as I listen to your story, this is my putting the pieces together. You would go behind the camera to bring out of people what they didn't even see they had. And that story would then allow you to evolve to this moment or to moments before this moment, because you've been ready to get on stages now for a while, right? Yeah. That would say to you, okay, if I'm doing this for other people, it's okay to do it for myself. Mm-hmm. And what if anything in this moment is preventing you from having the confidence to tuck that story into your past, always acknowledge it and honor it and speak of it because it's made you and brought you to where you are, but to know that it isn't your present?
Can you say the question just a little more succinctly? I love the whole trajectory of what you said.
Yeah. What is it in this moment that keeps you from letting go of the past and living in your present? Mm-hmm. If you were to take a soul portrait of yourself, what would be that thing that would fall away right this moment? So that
what would fall away in this moment if I were to have a soul portrait of myself? All of the masks of trying hard to prove myself worthy, or my looking good story. And also, ironically enough, part of my looking good story is like all this ugly pain that happened. So I've been sober for 29 years. And although I love the 12-step programs, I also believe that part of them is reliving the story of like what happened and what it was like. And through that, I myself have become addicted to the retelling of the pain, instead of just like being present in the moment to what is, which is, I have this absolutely incredible gift. And it doesn't matter that I went through this painful part. Like, the thing is that I have this power and this presence right now to offer the world. So what would it take for me to step fully into that? All of those things that you read on my resume, like the Dalai Lama and the Navy SEALs and the Kennedys, those were all invitations. I didn't ever go out seeking them. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to photograph the Dalai Lama, I'm going to work with the Kennedys. That was so beyond my perception. And what I know to be true for me is that all I can do is speak my truth and wait for those opportunities to come to me, and be willing, ready, and able to step into them as they come. So I do believe I'm ready. I mean, that's why we're here today, because honestly, the lineup of who you have on these podcasts is absolutely incredible. And I've listened to a bunch of them, like, and Jan Levin-The. I was like, oh my God, how amazing. And so I do see the power and the gift that I have as that incredible and transformational. But I also see that it's not really about me and my ego and what I'm going to do with it. And I'm not going to make it happen. I'm going to just surrender. And that's how all those opportunities have come to me, is through truly surrendering.
Fabulous. So this is normally the part of the show that we switch to what you do, and where you talked about what you do, but somehow I even feel that what you do is switching in the moments that we're talking about it. But
yeah. You know,
so talk about that for me, if you can.
Yeah, well, you know, so I became really good at seeing other people as a photographer. I became incredibly sophisticated at looking through the lens and perceiving these things, and just trying to turn it around and show people that.
So did you become really good at that, or isn't that what you've always been doing as a child, that you were able to see people, but you were told?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I think that the reason I became a photographer was because it was a great mask. Like, I was wearing all black, and I have this big thing in front of my face. And even now I realize when I'm doing soul portraits, when I'm smiling and I'm like, oh my God, I'm loving what I see. This is incredible. People can't see that. All they see is this huge lens in this black box. And so, yes, I was always seeing something deeper, but I was never speaking about it. And I was only trying to invoke it in the person somehow magically, but it wasn't known to me until I was in front of the Dalai Lama, and he asked me to put the camera down, and he gestured for me to come and stand beside him. And he said, you know, he basically said in his broken English, like, Tim, you take camera. And Tim happened to be the person interviewing him for Time Magazine, who also happened to be the bureau chief for all of magazine at the time. This is back in 1999. So he's telling the bureau chief of all Time Magazine, you take the camera, you take a picture of me and this person.
Wow.
It was in that moment that I was invited to let go of this mask, that I felt really seen and really known. And it wasn't a word that he spoke. It was just like, I felt this presence. And then apparently I needed more of that, because I've since gone on to photograph him 15 times on 3 different continents. And every time we photograph each other, it's like, it's for Time Magazine, it's for the Mayo Clinic, it's with the Kennedy family. We laugh with each other, like, what are you doing here? No, what are you doing here? And I've often sat down and been like, why? Why did I need to be in his presence so many times? And I really believe it was because every time it was like peeling another layer of the onion and helping me to be more of me. And that's how the soul portrait was born. It was this transmission of energy that was like the ultimate permission to just put down the camera and be seen.
Wow.
And it was in a split second that I had this vision that I could see people's souls. And the reality is that I could always see people's souls. But what I got permission to speak it into the world. And when we speak it, it becomes reality.
Yeah. So are your parents still alive?
Yes, they are.
So what do they think of the woman they thought would never be anything now?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. My mom, I've done a soul portrait of my mom, and me doing a soul portrait of my mom led to her meeting her soulmate because it's what she put out into the world, which is the incredible uh, gift of the soul portrait is now you're like, instead of projecting an image, you're magnetizing to you that which you most desire. So my mom is all down with it. I've done a soul portrait of my sister. Now my dad turned from this like mystic hippie into a very right-wing religious person.
Wow.
And he, this is so interesting, such an interesting twist. He was the one that really helped me develop my spiritual sense, that he took me to the spiritual master that named me Siddiqi. And we had that journey together until on his third wife, he became this born again Christian. And he said to me, you're this world-renowned photographer. Why would you mess it up by tapping into this dark realm that will only lead to your demise? And it doesn't matter. He literally said this. It doesn't matter how famous or how much money you ever make as a psychic. It will always lead you to a path of evil.
Wow.
And, so again, but he sees how gifted I am as a photographer, but that part is kind of like it's off limits. Now, my sister, my mom, the rest of my family, they call me for readings. They call me to talk to their pets, so I have permission there, but never from my dad. Yeah.
So I'm just sitting with it because it seems like no matter how far you go in your own peeling of the layers, there's always someone who wants to put another layer on. And where do you sit now with your dad? And you don't have to get that personal. But like what I want you to try and touch for me is, I'm sure every listener listening has this voice in them that this is what they are, this is what they can do. And another voice outside of them from someone saying, no matter what you do, no matter who you are, if you keep going that way, you're going to fail. It's evil, it's bad. And I want you to sort of just extrapolate out for us for a moment. And just what would you say to someone who knows themselves, but is too scared because of all the voices that have told them they can't be themselves? Because that's the world we live in, right?
Ultimately, the human condition is suffering when we are listening to anything outside of ourselves and hoping that it's going to give us a better relationship with ourselves. We will never win, because it doesn't matter if it's my dad or someone in the media or a client or something in the world that says this is wrong, this is bad. Think of the witches. The quote unquote witches that were actually medicine women and leaders that got shut down. It's bad. It's wrong. What you're seeing is evil. This is a reoccurring theme in the history of the world. It's like, we want the magic, we want the healing, but we're condemning it at the same time. So the only thing that I've come to in healing is that ultimately it doesn't matter if it's about that kind of magic or some other kind of magic. We all have this unique expression of who we are, and it's a lifelong journey to accept it and to own it, and then give that gift to the world, to express ourselves fully. And this entire thing can be summed up into a lack of expression, self-muting, and the path and the journey that we go on to really come into our own, wherein we're willing, we're ready, we're able to show the world who we really are and be of service. Because ultimately, it's really not about me. It's not about me. It's about me letting go of that inner critic and the outer critic and saying, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be a critic. And my gift is so big and so profound that the only thing that will ever make me happy is to express this gift in the world, because it really does help with, that's why I think I stayed on the planet. Was there was so many times when I wanted to check out because it was so painful. And the reason I stayed was because it still feels better to offer the gift than to like wrestle with the pain of criticism from myself and others.
Yeah. First of all, it's so beautiful to listen to you, because you can see those places of pain that you experience, because your voice cracks and you can still feel the pain that you carry with you from those moments. And so the question I really want to ask you, and again, I didn't realize we were going to go this place, and so you don't have to answer any of this. You can throw it away and just say, not relevant for me at this point in time. But with so many voices telling you that what you experience is not real, it feels like, well, let me ask it as a question. Are you responding to those voices, or are you responding to your own voice that says, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not able, and those are just the symphony that gives breath to your solo, if you understand what I'm saying? In other words, are these voices really inside of you, or are they outside of you?
So are the voices inside of me or outside of me? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
matter. It's all information, and it doesn't matter whose voice it is or what it is. My role, my job, my opportunity is to sort through and sift the information and pull down and pull through and convey the pieces of information that are most relevant in the moment, based on what the person needs, what the person is asking for. And when my voice cracks, it's not just my pain. This is like this visibility syndrome, or whatever we want to call it, this holding back of our deepest, most sacred expression of who we really are. I see it all the time, and it's the root cause of why we're not successful, why we're not thriving. And that's why my voice cracks, because I see it in every single one of my clients. And my lifelong mission is to really be present to people and to see them and hope in that moment of transmitting love, that I help them to transmute their own suffering so that they can become more of who they really are and express that in the world.
So I'm going to go one step more, and then if it doesn't go, I'm going to just drop it, okay? But let me try and tell you a story that's in the mosaic. Okay. Mo's walking through village after village, and one evening he starts to experience this incredible aroma. And he can tell it's not from the place that he's at. It's wafting in the air from miles away. And it's becoming dusk, and he thinks, I should walk now so that I wake up tomorrow and see it. And he thinks, no, I'm just going to stay here. And in the morning, I'll get up early, and I'll as the sun's rising, I'll come to the village so that I can awaken to this whatever it is that I'm smelling, this aroma that is magnificent. And he senses it's an aroma of flowers and gardens and things. And he does that. And he comes into this village that is just filled with the most exquisite gardens you can ever imagine. And he's seen beautiful gardens because he's traveled so much and he's walked so much. But these gardens put all those other gardens to shame. Not to shame, but he's never seen anything like these gardens. And he's so intoxicated by the sensation, just the beauty of vision and smell, that he just closes his eyes and tries to feel it in another way. And all of a sudden he feels a presence in front of him. And he opens his eyes, and 2 inches in front of his face is the face of another man. And Mo looks at him and says, who are you? And the gardener says, I know who I am. I'm the gardener. And Mo said, you're the one that I wanted to see. How did you make these gardens so exquisite? And he said, I'm a gardener. I know how to put colors together and sizes and shapes, and and I'm not the one that makes anything exquisite. The flowers already come in with the beauty of who they are. I just arrange them in a way. And Mo says, no, I've seen that I've seen that ability before. How did you make them so exquisite? Mm-hmm. And he said, perhaps what you're seeing is what isn't there. And he said, Mo, have you ever gardened? And Mo said, of course I've gardened. And he said, well, when you get to that place in your garden where there's a clump of weeds and you try and pull it out and it breaks in your hands, what do? He said, well, normally I just level it off so the garden looks good. And the gardener says, maybe that's what you're not seeing. I'm a gardener, so I dig those out from the very roots, because when the roots of those things are still in you, everywhere you look, you will see those weeds. And when you get those roots of those weeds out of your garden, you'll never see weeds in another garden again. And so perhaps what you see in these gardens is the fact that there are no roots of weeds here. And I want you to take that vision of no roots of weeds with you wherever you go. So I want to ask from another perspective. There's been so much criticality. I'm creating a new word.
I love it. I love making up words.
There's been so much criticality placed upon your head. There's been so many times where you're told that maybe that's created a weed within you that actually believes that.
Sure.
And that moment that happened just a moment ago where you left that past behind, when we pull that weed out, you don't have to ever see that again in anybody else. Does that make sense to you? Is that because
yeah. Well, it's interesting because I actually don't see the weeds in anybody else. I do see that pure garden that is, the blossoming of their soul. And when I'm witnessing that, when I'm interacting with the fiber and the very being of their soul, there are no weeds, there are no blocks. There's just that pure, what I'm experiencing is the pure energy of who they are. And so again, it's like, we have the human condition, and enlightenment to me would be the moment in time where we completely transcend that once and forever. And we no longer live in the story of limitation. We no longer live in the story of interpretation of who and what we're supposed to be based on society and other people. We come into that garden where we've ferreted out all those things that we don't want, and we're just now enjoying the pure essence. And that to me would be pure enlightenment. That's what that would be. And here's the thing. I've had profound white light spiritual experiences, and we still come back into reality. And I believe the goal is to take that level of connection that I have and that I get to have as a result of all that I am, and to bring it into this mundane, ordinary world and help to invoke that in others so that they can have the spiritual experience of coming, to their highest selves. So if it was a once and for all thing, I would be enlightened by now. I'd be like the next Buddha, because I've had those moments. It's the integration of them that is the lifelong practice of like having the spiritual experience and then coming back into physical form to all the, the chaos of the world around me. And my goal is to, at the very least, not cause more suffering to myself and to others. And you're right. You're absolutely right. When I go back into those weed roots, it is causing suffering. But hopefully every time I speak the truth of what I experience, I'm like the divine weed whacker, or like the divine,
gardener. You're just
the gardener of people's souls.
Yeah. So tell me something that you found to be true today that you didn't think was true a while back.
You mean today in this interview, in this moment?
No, just, this interview notwithstanding, just something now is true that you never thought was true, that you thought was false before. Is there anything?
Yes, absolutely there is. what I used to believe to be true was that through talking through the wounds, or let's say talking about the weeds, that we could actually heal ourselves. And I actually don't think that's true. I honestly don't think that no matter how much we dive into why are the weeds there and where did they come from and what's the meaning of the weeds and like how long are they going to be there and how do we get rid of them, that none of that actually is effective. What's effective is to go to that level of being the gardener of your soul and realizing that it's only when we connect with our higher selves that all of those roots, all those weeds just dissolve. Because nothing, no amount of darkness, no amount of pain can withstand the brilliant light of pure unconditional love, which is what we really are. So that's
so what, if you can, what brought you to that realization? What was the place where, because there are a lot of people who are sitting in that place where they are talking about the weeds. They're talking about the problems. They're talking about it. In my story, all the gardener said is you don't have to talk about them. All you do is get a shovel and dig them out. And then they're not there and there's nothing to talk about. But what is the place for you that brought you to that place where you said, enough talking? Just put the light in the room and darkness disappears the moment you turn on the light. What was that moment that turned on the light for you?
Can you say it in another way? Because I'm trying to.
Yeah, if I heard you correctly, what you're saying was that all this talk about weeds, which sounds like, sort of what you were doing through AA and things like that, of, going over and rehashing, which was something that you believed would help you. All of a sudden you realized in a moment or two or a lifetime or two, whatever it is, that wasn't what was going to change the situation. What was going to change the situation was just shining this light on the situation, and the darkness was going to be gone. My words rather than yours at that point. But what was the moment that you had where you realized light dispels darkness, not just more talking about darkness?
Well, I've had many of those moments. Okay. And that's what I would call a spiritual awakening, or, a white light experience. So I've had many of those moments of having this divine perspective of looking down at the pain and suffering and of the actual experiences and like rising above it, transcending it. And, even when I listen to people like Abraham Hicks, who's really trying to get people into the vortex, getting them into this really good feeling place, what they're constantly addressing is people's objections and people's basically arguing for their limitations and then trying to transcend that, right? And so it's a practice. It's not a one and done thing. And so the way I'm offering my gift to the world is, look, you're in front of my camera. You've already told me what your blocks are to being visible, what your woundedness is around it. And so now I'm going to show you a greater power, a power that's greater than, it's like the sun as opposed to the weeds. And now you're going to have a visual reference of that moment where I'm describing to you the essence of your soul, which changes your physical frequency, and you start to vibrate at this different level. And I'm going to actually show you who you are when you are in alignment with the essence of who you are. And that remembrance, that constantly referring to that instead of the past, instead of the pain, is what's going to change you. Because on some level, you will see, you will know, you will believe that it actually exists. And for me, that's the turning point when I actually saw the power that I brought through to unlock that in other people. And I had the visual evidence of the change. Then I started believing that there's nothing that soul can't transcend. There's no hurt, there's no wound, there's no pain, there's no amount of suffering that in that moment you will have freedom.
Wow.
And then the active practice is to keep listening to that moment where it's being described to you, where you're actually having this palpable experience of who and what you really are. And then you're looking at it, you're listening, you're looking, you're listening, you're looking, you're experiencing, you're getting all those levels of learning, and you're actually tuning to that state of being rather than the problem, the pain, the suffering. And that's, that's my diagnostic tool. That's the medicine that I'm bringing into the world. And it has had an incredible, profound, unexpected, miraculous outcome for, dozens, if not hundreds of people, because I've done hundreds of these soul portraits now.
Yeah.
So
has it ever not manifested? Have you ever been in a situation where someone just couldn't get there?
Yes.
And so what's kept it from manifesting? Because like when I listen to you talk, I think how exquisite that you would catch a moment that could then become a new memory that people could just look at and say, this is what I remember now, not all these other memories. This is the memory that I want to remember.
This is who I really am. Like, this is evidence of who I really am. Yeah.
Totally. So what's prevented them from
what's prevented them? Well, I think it comes full circle, Danny, to your point of, can we really, in a split second, attain that level of enlightenment where we embody and where our soul actually, ascends into our physical form? And because I don't think enlightenment is actually going out there and interacting with all these unseen and unknown beings and energies and seeing into past lifetimes and all that, although I can do all that, talking to disembodied spirits. The point is that the people that have not gotten the soul portrait are people that I somehow haven't helped them in the literal groundwork to create movement and energy and space for them to let go of the old story, for them to let go of the mask of needing to please other people. And this is what it looks like, I haven't. They are more committed to their own story of what it needs to look like. And the camera is just like the most amazing reflection of how committed we are to our masks. And those people just have only looked at the images through their human eyes. And then they pick apart their smile, their face, their, the clothes, the hair, the makeup, the background, and they can't feel it. Mm-hmm. Because the people that are really ready and really say yes and do the groundwork, preparing the ground for that seed and those things to blossom, those are the people that are able to look through a new lens, to get a new perspective, to shift away the filters. And the people that haven't done that, and there are people that aren't ready, but I'm much better now at assessing ahead of time. If the person really wants and is really ready to have that transformation. And in the exploration sessions that I have with people, if someone really doesn't want to transform their story of suffering, they will actually say that. That, they will say to me, right, that basically, no, I don't think I have that. I don't want to overcome it. And I'm like, great, here's 5 people in LA that are amazing photographers. Go get a headshot with them. And I just did it twice yesterday to people that were like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, great.
Yeah. So we got to get to the place where we're wrapping up. I could talk to you all day, and you know that. So from all that you've seen, whether people will come to you for a soul portrait or not, what would be the one thing that you would want people to know? That whether they get the photo that captures their memory of that moment of enlightenment for them, or they don't, what would be that one thing that you would like to tell them that would allow them to release that pain, allow them to release the stories, and maybe even just in that one moment, capture the essence of who they are, what would that one thing be? Out of all the things you see and hear, what would that one thing be that you would tell them?
I'm going to try to put this as succinctly as I can. So what would be the one thing that I would tell them that would help them to release that and step into their essence? Well, it's not a one thing, it's an experience, because I believe we have to bypass the cognitive mind that's like the egoic mind that's the gatekeeper, and go underneath to a subconscious level and speak to the subconscious. So I have this amazing meditation that I literally channeled 9 years ago, and I've never been able to outdo it. And then I put it to subliminal track and to binaural beats. So it's literally one energy is going in one ear, one frequency is going in the other ear, and then the brain itself is creating this other frequency of cohesion. And in that, I'm channeling and transmitting this permission, this state of permission. And I will freely and readily give that to anybody that wants it, because it is the secret sauce. It's the thing that cultivates the soil so that seed of divine wisdom can come into them. And maybe they don't need me. Maybe they just need to experience this frequency, because it's not really what I say. It's the energy. It's like, it's not what the Dalai Lama says. It's not what Nelson Mandela says. It's who they be that transmits an energy that actually changes the frequency. So, it wouldn't be what I say. It would be the frequency that I'm emitting in this awesome meditation that has helped so many people shift.
And so how would I get that meditation, or how would our listeners get that meditation?
Sure. It's the freebie on my website. So if you go to my website, siddiqiray.com, it's the yes, I want to get in tune with my soul meditation. And again, I would love for everybody on the planet to have it, because my clients come back to me 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, and they're like, I listen to it every day. I still listen to it. I listen to it when I feel out of sorts or am caught in the muck of my story. I listen to it, and somehow, I don't know what it is, but there's something in it that loosens me up and makes me available for that.
Yeah.
The frequency of my soul. So yeah.
I think one of the things for me, which is really interesting, and I'm starting to notice it, not that my work is a great work for the Mosaic, but I'm noticing it in great works of people that they do, that it isn't the words, it's a space between the words. It isn't what you actually see, it's the things that you don't see. It's the vibration. It's like we use our words to occupy the mind, like Occupy Wall Street. We need to occupy mind to stop it from getting in the way of allowing a transmission of a vibration to come through. And when I talk to people about reading the Mosaic, I do a similar thing, which is I say, the stories are going to be beautiful. They're going to charm you. They're going to inspire you. You're going to feel uplifted from it. But look at the space between the words when you're reading. Allow the space to talk to you, not just the words. And so I love that that's what you said is in your meditation. Before we give people your website, which we will list below, and how people can get in touch with you, I just want to ask you the question I always ask at the end. I know our world has come a long way. We're no longer tarring and feathering people. We have information at our disposal. We have a lot of good things going on. But when you look at the world today, is this the world that you always dreamed of handing over to future generations?
On some level, the vision that I've always had of the future is that there's a place where technology and enlightenment coexist.
Yeah.
And where we're literally hardwired into this bigger mainframe of the World Wide Web is actually all souls coming together and interacting as one organism. And so in some ways, I think it's amazing that we are all interconnected through this digital technology. The thing that horrifies me, of course, is the way that corporations and whatnot manipulate our information for their own good. Yeah. And so I think the revolution is really in how are we present online in this digital medium, and can we bring our souls so that like nobody can steal your soul. You know, like Facebook can't steal my soul. But when I'm transmitting it online, we now have ability to connect to people all across the world, just like you're doing now. Yeah. And so is it the world that I would want to pass on? In some ways, yeah, because I feel like more than ever, you see in mass media all these instances of these people with superpowers. What are superpowers? That's your soul expressing itself. Yeah. So we're giving ourselves more and more permission, and yet the greater the light, the greater the shadow. Yeah. You know? And so that's what future generations are really going to have to reconcile is how do we own our own power so that nobody can take it away from us? Because that's the whole story, is that we willingly give our power away.
And so what would be one thing that you would suggest to people to own their power and not give it away? Just a quick sound.
The one thing I would say is have the courage to be who you really are and put that out into the world, because that's a game changer. Beautiful.
And what I love about that statement is you've heard the history in this short hour that we've spoken of people and how much people try and discourage Siddiqi, but Siddiqi is you and me. How many times people have tried to discourage us from being who we are, living our truth, being what we want to say, and the desire to fit in and be accepted and be loved and be seen by people and not criticized and not has sometimes made us cower into somebody other than we are. And you see, for me, when I look out into the world, I see a world that for the most part doesn't know who it is. They've lost sight of who they are. And so I can't encourage you enough to get in touch with Siddiqi, to listen to her meditation, if nothing else, to have her work with you, to allow yourself to get out of your head and see the memory of who you actually are, so that you can see yourself on a consistent basis whenever you look there, and you can have a memory, this is who I am. No matter what everybody around me says, this is who I am. And you can look at it every day, every moment, every time when you're in trouble, every time when someone tells you that's not who you are, you can say, no, I know who I am. And I really encourage you to contact her. Siddiqi, I'm going to have your website down below, but is there another way that you want people to get in touch with you?
All my contact information is on the website, and I'd always be happy to have a free coffee date with someone to help them look at how this is playing out in their life. Because I love, in 20 minutes, I can help people get unstuck and get going in the right direction, unstuck from being in the weeds. Right. And so I would readily and willingly offer that to anybody that wants to have this kind of conversation with me, to facilitate their ease and their grace in the world.
And they can contact you.
That's also on my website.
And so they can contact you through the website to get that.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Or through Facebook or any, Instagram. So
will you send me all those links and we'll
definitely.
We'll put them in the show notes, okay? Yeah. Siddiqi, thank you so much for taking of your busy day to spend an hour with me and the people that are going to listen to this. Thank you for touching us with your presence. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And for all of you listening, thank you for taking time out of your day and your life to be with us and enjoy these moments with us. I hope you'll like what you see. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. I hope you'll share these podcasts with your friends. And until the next podcast, remember, nothing is as it seems. Thank you
and bless you for this beautiful work you're doing in the world. It's really profound. This is the most important thing I could possibly do all day. So thank you.
Blessings. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ciao.